Okay. We have two special guests, Matt Bailey and Donna Appell. Donna Appell is the founder and executive director of the Hermansky-Pudlak Syndrome Network, and Matt Bailey is a person with HPS. If you read the title of this and the description of this, you'll know that Matt will tell his story, but he knew he had albinism recently, found out he had HPS. Some of you may know about HPS. Some of you may not know much about it at all, and that's why we're having this call. If you have any questions, Matt is going to tell his story, and then we're going to open this up to a Q&A. So if you have any questions while Matt is speaking, please put them in the chat. Type them out in the chat. If you're not comfortable using the chat, that's also fine. We can take questions verbally after Matt is done speaking. Donna is here to answer all the medical things. And Donna, actually, before Matt gets started, do you mind? I'm going to put you on the spot, just giving a quick rundown of just basic what HPS is if someone is coming to this call and they really don't know how it's related to albinism and all of that.
Sure. Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome is a type of albinism. So everybody that has HPS has albinism. Not everybody with albinism has HPS. So it is a syndrome, a type of albinism that causes several things. It causes the albinism. The low vision is exactly the same in albinism and HPS, but it goes and further to cause a bleeding disorder. So there's a platelet bleeding defect that has people have trouble stopping bleeding a little bit. It can cause bowel disease, and in some genetic subtypes, it can cause lung disease. So it doesn't stop at the albinism, though everybody with HPS has albinism.
Thank you, Donna. And this call is very near and dear to my heart because I have HPS too. Type 3. I said 2. It sounded like I meant type 2. But I have HPS as well. And I was not diagnosed till I was 18. So everyone's diagnosis is a different journey, but Matt has a very interesting journey. I saw Matt a few years ago at the HPS conference, and I knew who Matt was through Noah. And I thought, why is Matt here? Um, and then I went up and chatted with him. So, yeah. So Matt, without further ado, if you would like to share some of your story, and we would love to hear it. And thank you so much for coming on this call too.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I knew I had albinism because, I looked the part, but I was actually very fortunate when I was born during the dark ages of the 70s that I was born at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, which no longer delivers babies. My mom blames that on me. But my pediatrician, before I even left the hospital, knew what albinism was and diagnosed it and kind of downplayed it to my parents, actually, at a time when it really was not downplayed. I mean, parents were hearing back then that, like, oh, your child is blind and they can't go out in the sun ever, and just horrible things. And my doctor was like, oh, well, you want to make sure he doesn't get sunburned and he's going to be really farsighted or really nearsighted or something like that. He really kind of didn't want to scare them, but so I always knew I had albinism, and I got involved with NOAA way back in 1998. In fact, my wife, who also has albinism, and I met at the 1998 NOAA conference in Chicago outside of a bioptic driving workshop, which was fortuitous because we would later on go on to help legalize bioptic driving in North Carolina, where we live. But that's a whole other story for another webinar. So I knew I had albinism. I had been involved with NOAA. I actually served on the board of directors with Donna from 2000 to 2006, I believe it was. And so I knew Donna really well. And I knew about HPS, having been on NOAA's board. And I would even tell doctors, like, hey, there's this type of albinism that I don't have. But in case you ever have a patient and you can't figure out why they have stomach issues or a bleeding disorder or lung issues, look into this thing called HPS because it's really rare. But I just assumed I had run-of-the-mill albinism. I never got checked for anything. I had, I bruised really easily, but I just assumed that was because that's how we look, and the skin's white and all that. So, and when my wife and I got married, our child was born without albinism, so we at least knew we had two different genetic types. But here again, no clue that I had HPS, even though my own kid was telling me I should get tested. Because occasionally, like my kid's like, you're always bleeding. You should get tested. So fast forward to the fall of 2023. I am visiting a good old friend of mine up in Roanoke, Virginia, which for anyone who's not familiar with that part of the country, it's in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains in Appalachia. It's a beautiful part of the country. And so Roanoke is in this valley, but surrounded by mountains. So we're climbing a mountain that's like maybe 1,000 feet, nothing at all. In my youth, I could do that with no sweat. Well, we got about halfway up, and I was so out of breath that I told my friend, like, I can't go on anymore. I have to stop. And I just assumed this was because I was getting old and fat. But I had a family history of heart disease, and my dad had bypass surgery at age 45. So I said, well, I better just go to the cardiologist and get this checked out. Well, in doing a CT scan, this is summer of 2024, they said, well, your heart's fine. There's no problem there. But we saw something on your CT scan in your lungs that we want to refer you to pulmonology. So they refer me to pulmonology, and they said, hey, you clearly have signs of pulmonary fibrosis, which is where your body is causing your lungs to scar. And there's like 2,000 different reasons that, pulmonary fibrosis can develop in people. And I said, there's this chance that I have this thing called Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome because of the fact that I have albinism, and it's a subset of albinism that can cause lung issues. And my doctor looked at me and said, well, if you just walked in here and diagnosed yourself with an extremely rare genetic disorder, I'm going to feel really, really useless. Well, lo and behold, they ordered the genetic, he called the Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. He probably talked to Donna. I don't think I knew that at the time, but in putting the pieces together, he got right on it. He contacted the HPS network. He talked about my case with a colleague of 200 pulmonologists and ultimately ordered me to get genetic testing. And lo and behold, it came back as HPS4. Now, we've talked a little bit about the different types of HPS that you can have. Donna, how many are we up to now? Do you know?
Oops, sorry. 11.
11, okay. So from what I understand, 1 through 4 are the ones that we see, at least, as far as I know, HPS is, when I said it's very rare, it's somewhere between 9 in a million and 1 in a million people have it. And through the 11 types, the more common types are HPS 1, 2, 3, and 4. And again, Donna, you're going to have to correct me here. The types 1 and type 4 will generally have people at some point in their midlife develop pulmonary fibrosis.
So type 2 is not that common.
Okay.
But type 1, 2, and 4 100% of the time get pulmonary fibrosis.
Okay, thank you. So
And type 1 is the most common HPS.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have type 4. And so when the genetic testing came back and the doctor, said there's, I sent the HPS network an email, and within 5 minutes, like, Donna says, can I call you? And I felt really, really fortunate in the sense that I had known Donna going on probably far more, several decades, longer than Donna wants me to admit here in public that I've known her. And she's like, I'm your new mother. Like, so I felt like I was already connected to the HPS network through knowing Donna all these years involving Noah. So that was just, of anyone who had to get this condition, I'm thankful in a way that it was me because of that connection. But it was a lot to process. So we're in the fall of 2024, and I'm finding out that I have pulmonary fibrosis, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what that means. And I think I kind of was on a time delay of sort of hearing the information about it and processing what that means. Because what it ultimately means, for me at least, and again, different types of HPS have different challenges and manifestations, but for me, it meant that that getting out of breath that I was feeling on that mountain a couple of years ago, was actually my lungs not having the capacity that they had. At that point in time, my lungs had probably lost about 1/3 of their capacity to hold air. So, naturally, if it's getting less air in there, you're going to have to breathe heavier and heavier and harder and faster to get the oxygen you need, and you're going to get out of breath faster. And it's gone down a little bit since then. There was a lot for me to process, I think. First of all, I think I'd always identified as a person with albinism, and now I'm someone with HPS. And so it's almost like I was going through the journey again. It had taken me a while during my teenage years when you're a teenager, you kind of want to just be like everybody else. And it kind of taken me a while from looking at albinism as this bad thing to being a really good thing. And so I had done that journey many decades ago with albinism. And now with HPS, I was starting on a different journey of well, do I still have albinism? Do I still am I going to feel out of place at a NOAA conference now that I've gone to 11 of? It was really weird. It was amazing to go to my first HPS Network conference in New York because they're just such warm and welcoming people who are more than willing to share information and personal experiences and connection. But it was also really weird as somebody who had been on the board of directors of NOAA and had talked about albinism and had been kind of someone who felt like I really knew a lot about it, to suddenly be at an albinism related conference and to be the newbie again. I think another component of it that was hard for me to swallow is a lot of my time with NOAA volunteering. I really kind of devoted myself to thinking about all those parents who had heard terrible information about albinism, especially in regards to vision. And I kind of wanted to play a role of like, hey, yes, there's going to be challenges and some of them are going to be heartbreaking, but really your kid's going to be fine. These challenges that you have with low vision, there are tools to overcome them, and everyone's experience is different, but don't assume that your child's life is ruined because of this. It's not. And I had sort of like this, I don't know if you want to call it an identity crisis, but I had this moment where I was sort of processing, well, what about HPS when you're dealing with things like pulmonary fibrosis, which, to be clear, there is no cure for the scarring that starts happening to you when you're in your 30s or 40s, or in my case, my 50s, with pulmonary fibrosis. It gets worse and worse and worse until either you can get a lung transplant, which is fairly new in the grand scheme of history, or you can no longer breathe and you die. So it is a fatal condition, with the exception of getting a lung transplant. Donna is working vigilantly with scientists to change that. But for now, that was the complete antithesis of what I felt like I had been telling parents in the broader albinism community about having albinism. And I sort of had this moment where like, well, have I been lying to parents all this time? I'm like, well, no, I haven't, because I was talking about the low vision aspect of it, which of course is not fatal. But this is, and I won't even get into the GI tract issues, which fortunately I don't have, but can also be really, and Donna, you're welcome to chime in on that part, but those components can be, as you well know, detrimental to people's lives as well. And then there's other issues you have to be concerned about, just with the fact that your blood doesn't clot as well, because when you're having surgery or something of that nature, you have to be mindful of that. So for me, a lot of it came down to sort of processing this information about what's happening with my lungs and learning as much as I can about it, and having to do that at my own pace, because a lot of the information came at me, frankly, faster than I had the capacity to digest it. And then a lot of it really had to do with kind of the identity of, am I still a person with albinism? Now I'm a person with, I've always thought of, it's funny because I've always thought of myself as someone who really advocated for, well, yes, technically low vision is indeed a disability, and it's perfectly fine for people who identify as such. But for me personally, I'd always said, well, like, I don't want to be categorized as being disabled, because there are ways I can overcome my vision to accomplish the things I want to accomplish. Well, now I'm finding that the pulmonary fibrosis, now I'm probably at about 60% of my lung capacity. So it's gone down a little bit since I got diagnosed. And I'm finding myself thinking, well, you really do have to accept that this is limiting some of the things you could do. When I lift things that are heavy now, like if I lift something that's, 50, 60 pounds before, no problem. Now, if I lift, good example is I actually am working on restoring an old sports car that my dad had. And I have this like jack that I have to take out to jack up the car. And it weighs like 70, 75 pounds. Used to be I could lift that, take it outside, no problem. Now I can do it, but I'm completely out of breath after I do it, and I have to go sit down for about 10 minutes to recover from doing that. And so that's kind of just one tangible example of the journey. So I guess what I would and what's interesting to me, I would say, and I'm sorry for this is kind of just a rambling example of what's going on. There are medications that you can take for pulmonary fibrosis that may slow it. And Donna, here, you may want to chime in, but there's yet to be one that is actually proven to slow it. And there's none that are proven to actually stop it. So as I said, now there is no cure other than to try to, slow that down. And there really is no definitive way to do that at this point in time. Like, Donna's working on it, but, for people who get pulmonary, and again, Donna, chime in when I'm wrong, for people who get pulmonary fibrosis, it can typically happen in your 30s, but as we're finding now, we're finding people that happen in their 40s and 50s, and I think we have some people that even happen in their late 50s. The GI issues, however, that some people with HPS have can happen at any age. So I guess that's kind of my journey as someone who feels like, I just thought I had albinism, and then late in life to discover that I indeed had HPS. I'm so grateful I knew, had been connected to the community enough to know about it. I guess I can just start taking questions if y'all have any.
Yeah, and I want to really quick say anybody who has any questions, you can put them in the chat. I know some of you logged on after I said that, so you can type them in the chat or ask them verbally. And I want to say thank you, Matt, for sharing that story. It's very brave to come on here and share something kind of vulnerable and personal. And I think I have HPS as well, and I find that it's meaningful to me to share the information with people because I didn't go as long, but I was 18 when I got diagnosed, and I wish I had been diagnosed sooner. So it is something I try to also talk about too. I wanted to say really quick also, you were saying how rare it is, and it is like around 1 in a million. But I will say for anyone who doesn't know much about Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, it is way more prevalent in Puerto Rico. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're
Oh yeah.
if you're Puerto Rican, Van Strom was like, "Yep." If you're Puerto Rican, I'm not, so you don't have to be. It's found everywhere around the whole world. You don't have to be Puerto Rican, but it's way more. It's way more common there. Donna, do you have the exact number? One in something
Sure,
in
it's carried, it's 1 in 1,800. It's carried 1 in 21 of people
yeah,
in Puerto Rico.
one in
And
21 carry it. That's
it's 1 in 1,800 have it.
Yeah. So if you have albinism and you're Puerto Rican, that's definitely even a higher likelihood that you might want to get tested. But we would love to take any questions anyone has for Matt or for Donna.
I just want to say that Matt's
Yeah, go
journey is very tumultuous in the fact that he's, said kind words that he got to reach out to me, but I have to let everybody know that I did know Matt for years and years and years and years. And when he called, as I should have been healing him, but I couldn't stop crying. I was crying and crying and
But
crying.
that meant a lot but Donna, that meant a lot to me because it meant that you cared, and it meant that I had someone on my side. I mean, that meant a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna. We'll both be crying if I don't stop talking about it. But it meant a
Oh,
lot to me.
Well,
It really
I
meant
just,
It meant the world to me in that moment.
it was I couldn't hold it in, man. I couldn't. I'm a professional. I'm a registered nurse. I take care of these people all the time. But Matt was like my son. He's like, I've known him for so long. And to tell me this, and I was just bawling my eyes out.
yeah. It's because you do care, Donna. And Donna is tirelessly working for a cure, and the whole HPS network. We are doing so much. We did get a chat from Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. Chuck says, how young can HPS be diagnosed? Should parents of a child with albinism request a blood or other type of test for HPS?
Can I take that question,
Of
Matt?
course. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, I think that it's a shame that children that are diagnosed with albinism at birth aren't screened for Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So certainly it's an easy genetic test. It's got a panel of its own, and it's just one genetic test that can be done, and they're diagnosed. And what the serious part about this is that if you don't know that you have HPS and you're taking things like Motrin or infant Motrin, babies taking Motrin, it's very contraindicated. And I could write a book on ways that people have like injured themselves because of not knowing that they had HPS. So children born with albinism should be immediately screened and make sure that they don't have HPS before they go on in their life. If people as adults are trying to get screened, they can do the platelet dense body test, which is easily done by any doctor. Doesn't even have to be a geneticist, your GP, anybody can write a prescription. You go to LabCorp or Quest, you get this blood test, and that will tell you whether or not you have HPS. It will not tell you the gene type that you need to get genetic test for. But sometimes people can't pay for the genetic test. Their insurance company won't cover it. So occasionally we have them do the platelet test first and then go on to the genetic screening.
And as a side note, my wife actually got the genetic test after I did, since she also has albinism. And we actually would have thought of the two of us that she was the one who would have HPS for issues involving bleeding that I won't get into because it's not her call. And also just anecdotally, she has that sort of darker type of hair that you could still tell by her skin that she has albinism, but her hair is darker. And just anecdotally, we had noticed more people in the HPS network have her hair type color than mine. I don't know if that matters at all, but she was the one who thought she would have HPS because of that. Nope, genetic testing came back not HPS. So
Yep, that's crazy. We do have another question. I wanted to also call a little shout out to Ashley, Donna's daughter, sitting right behind her. Ashley also has HPS. And so you can see
Hi.
if you
Nice to
look
see
at
you
Ashley
guys.
and then you look at me and then you look at Matt, we all look different.
yeah,
I was diagnosed incorrectly as having ocular albinism. I do not. And also I'm a female, which is it's very not common in females,
that was a
ocular
bad
albinism.
doctor.
Anyway, Travis says, and this is a good one for Donna. Can Crohn's be mistaken for HPS, Crohn's disease?
Well, if somebody is diagnosed with Crohn's disease, but they do not have albinism, then it's Crohn's disease. Certainly, if somebody with albinism is diagnosed with Crohn's disease, they should be tested for Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome because that is the bowel disease of HPS, is a Crohn's-like colitis. It's actually, if you were talking, real specifically, it's not Crohn's disease. It's the granulomatous inflammatory bowel disease of HPS that biopsies like Crohn's disease. It walks, it talks, it walks like a duck, talks like a duck. And it's Crohn's disease. So I get phone calls, often from people in the albinism community, and they'll tell me when I give them and give them a listen, they'll tell me that they have Crohn's disease. And it's like, yeah, well, you better get tested for HPS.
Yeah, great question. We don't have any other questions in the chat right now. Anyone?
I'll ask Donna a question. Donna, and not to put you on the spot here, but we talked about it being 1 in a million chance of having HPS in the global population, more if you're in certain pockets of Puerto Rico, of course. Do we have any idea, like within the albinism community, what when you're narrowing down to just people with albinism, what percentage have HPS, and what is the likelihood that there's people walking around like I was thinking that they had oculocutaneous albinism that actually had HPS genetically?
Oh, I think that it's fair to say that it's still rare, but it's definitely people in the albinism community that don't know that they have HPS. There was a study done in, I think it was in India. They had 100 people with albinism, and 34% of them didn't test genetically for albinism. So there are definitely people, especially as Casey mentioned, we'll have calls from girls that were diagnosed with ocular albinism, and I have to kind of teach people that that's anatomically correct. That's geographically pointing out on your body where your albinism is, but it's not diagnosis. It's not a diagnosis because genetically, usually boys have ocular albinism because it's an X-linked gene. So if a girl calls up and says that they were diagnosed, quote unquote, with ocular albinism, I'm like, no, that was somebody just thinking they know what they're talking about. And you need to go and get genetically tested.
Right, right.
I'd like to jump in for a minute. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Thompson.
My sense, tell me if I'm wrong, over the years, my sense about 5% of those with, I don't know where I got this figure, maybe it was just made up in my head. 5% of people with albinism had HPS.
I think that's really hard to say. I mean, if you're talking, people with Indian descent, they're HPS 4 types a lot. Ashkenazi Jewish people are HPS type 3. I think you have to look into the nationality of the person to see whether or not the percentage of incidence changes. Because when we're saying it's 1 in 500,000 to 1 in a million chance. That's a big generalization average of the world. But different populations, and I would say that African American Black people don't have HPS as often. So that would be a lower percent in that population. So it would have to be the population that you're talking about would get that percent. So I'm not sure where that came from.
It could be from my head. Getting back to ocular albinism for oculocutaneous albinism, there was a study when Richard King was around. He was talking about they looked at girls diagnosed with ocular albinism and found 100% had oculocutaneous albinism.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of
I
course.
don't know if you remember that study. You're talking about that.
And they could even have darker hair. It doesn't matter. They're still lighter than their siblings, somewhat.
And another point he made that ocular albinism by definition affects the vision. It's certain characteristics within the visual pathway, the eyes and the visual pathway, which makes something albinism. So that's just another side note. And of all the patients I've seen, maybe in my practice, I've been practicing 47 years now, and most of the people I've seen with albinism have been since Leanne was born. By the way, Leanne's going to be coming on this call shortly.
Oh, yay.
And I've seen about 80 individuals with albinism, and I think about HPS, and I talk to HPS about nearly every one of them. Even if they've said they've been diagnosed genetically with something else, I think if they have some problems, I still say keep it in the back of your mind, because it's one of those very important conditions within the albinism community.
And for those who don't know Dr. Rick Thompson, if I can tell his backstory, he was, are you fourth or fifth? Your sons are fifth generation.
Yeah, fourth. I would say fourth. Depends on how you count it.
Okay.
My grandfather started the practice in 1920.
And Rick was already not only practicing optometry, but low vision optometry when his daughter Leanne was born with albinism. And what good fortune to be born to a dad who was a low vision specialist.
It's just like Donna was already a nurse.
Yeah.
And then had Ashley.
I'm not sure that Ashley would find that to be good fortune, though.
I think it's good fortune for everyone involved.
Be born to a mom that is the way that she is.
Yes.
Donna, maybe this is a question I could ask. Like, so for if you're either an adult with albinism and you're kind of going along your life and everything seems fine, or maybe you're the parent of a newborn and you're still trying to grapple with, albinism 101. What are the advantages of having that HPS diagnosis before symptoms occur? You kind of hit on this earlier, but why would you want to know that, especially someone like me who's like, would my life have been better had I known I was going to have lung issues when I was 52? What would you tell someone about why you would want to know that you have HPS and not just albinism, not just OCA? I hate to say it that way, but right. You know what I mean?
Yes. For a number of reasons. So let's just talk about the adult for a moment. First of all, when you are going for surgery, like your gallbladder needs to come out, right? And you have albinism. Everybody's heard, or I hope, or maybe everybody's heard that before you go to surgery, you have to go to the hospital and get some blood tests for pre-admission testing, like for pre-surgical testing. Well, all of the tests that they do for that come out normal in HPS. Absolutely normal. They will test your clotting ability. They'll test it by doing a CBC and a coag profile. All of those will come out normal. Your platelet count will be normal. Your coag profile, your coagulation profile will be perfectly normal on paper. And then you'll go and have your gallbladder out and hemorrhage. So it's very obvious that people should actually know people with adults with albinism at this day and age, especially in this genetic world we live in, should kind of know what gene type they have, just in case they need to have a surgery or they get hit by a bus or something bad happens. I think that, like Dr. Thompson was saying, if you listen to what he was mentioning, even when people were diagnosed with albinism, like irregular albinism, he always told them, keep HPS in the back of your mind because it doesn't come up on normal blood tests. It will only come up on the electron microscopy of a platelet, looking at a platelet under this very special microscope, which are not in emergency rooms, not in hospitals. You have to go to a place that has one to see this. So it's hidden. It's a dangerous situation because it's hidden. So we have women going for childbirth, not knowing that they have HPS, and they're hemorrhaging during childbirth. We have, people getting wisdom tooth
I was
pulled
going to
and their
say tooth extraction.
tooth extractions, that kind of thing. So for adults, and then I think that if you know that you have HPS type 1, let's say, or type 1, 2, or 4, you know that you shouldn't be the one that's like painting your house with fumes all over your head, like, right? And you shouldn't be smoking cigars and the heck with the hookah. Like, you can't do that kind of stuff. And you should know that. And it has you with better care. It makes you take care of yourself more. Exercising lungs. We're like big with exercise and keeping your lung, like those should be, athletes working on their lung health and stuff. Ashley's a singer. She works and does singing all the time. For babies, just as I said, I think that it's horrible that children are born with albinism and discharged out of the nursery, out of the hospital, without being screened for HPS. Because if that baby gets a fever that's not being treated by Tylenol, they are being prescribed infant Motrin, which is totally contraindicated. I've had situation where a baby fell on their head with baby Motrin. So
And when
I
you say
think
that's contraindicated, can you what's the problem with having Motrin just for those?
sure, thank you. So in HPS, there's a platelet bleeding disorder. That's what causes the bleeding problem. And Motrin, NSAIDs, Advil, Pepto-Bismol, all these drugs actually cause you to bleed more. Curcumin, spices even, curcumin can cause bleeding more. So these are contraindicated, meaning you shouldn't be having any NSAIDs or Motrin if you have HPS, because it could just make you bleed worse.
We have
And
some
see,
more
I did.
good questions here, actually. And so, Vanstrom, I see your hand up. I'm going to get this question in the chat from Lee, though, because it's been here a while and it's a good question. And really quick, too, I do want to say even if you've never had a bad bleeding episode, that doesn't mean you don't have HPS either. I bruise a lot, but I've never had, knock on wood, I've never hemorrhaged. I've never had like a bad bleeding episode. So I would probably think, oh, I'm fine. I don't bleed that much. But
That
that's
was
not
me.
true.
That was me.
Yeah. So Lee says, for those who struggle with biology, can you talk about passing the HPS gene? Also, can people carry two different albinism types, one HPS gene and one non-HPS gene? So I think the question is, if you're diagnosed with oculocutaneous albinism, and that is you are genetically diagnosed with that, can you also have HPS, or can you not have both? I get that question a lot from people. So Donna.
Yes. So if that's the question, I want to be sure that I answer the questions entirely. But
Yes.
albinism, the way I kind of explain it is that albinism is caused, right, by a lack of the enzyme that creates melena, that creates pigment. It's a lower amount of tyrosinase or a lack of tyrosinase, right? That's what albinism is caused by. In Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, everybody has tons of tyrosinase. There's no lacking tyrosinase. So what the problem is that it doesn't traffic to the right place. So the albinism comes out the same, it looks the same, it acts the same, but it's caused by the tyrosinase enzyme not being able to traffic to the right place. In primary albinism, I quote primary albinism, OCA, OCA1, those P genes, all the primary albinism, it's because there's not enough tyrosinase. It's a lack of tyrosinase. So the answer is that you will only have one gene type or another. So a person with HPS is going to have albinism because of their HPS. A person with OCA is going to have albinism because of an OCA gene. And it's not going to be a mix of things. There are times where somebody could have, two alleles, like a chromosome from mom and one from dad, two alleles that come together, and they have to both have HPS in order to have a child with HPS. So you can't have, just like in Matt's family, like you can have two different types of albinism and they don't match, which is why your children don't have albinism. But a person with HPS has an HPS carrier mother and an HPS carrier father. There are times where a person with HPS can also have one mutation of an OCA gene, but they're not pathologic. I mean, they're not disease causing. They don't cause the albinism. They're just a gene that's in there. But that can happen at times as well.
Yeah.
Lee, did that satisfy the question? Because that was a deep question.
Lee, do you want to let us know if did that answer your question?
Well, if you have other question, put it in the
It
chat.
did. The reason I asked was because there was a post on one of the albinism groups today from a mom that had just gotten the genetic diagnosis for their child, and it was OCA1A and OCA1B. So those are different alleles, I think. So it was just I saw the answers that went out to her, and so far they've been accurate, thank the Lord, and anyone else involved. But I also just wanted her to, if there was an awareness I needed to share. I was pretty sure of my science, but not 100%. So I wanted to defer to the expert.
So anybody that's diagnosed with an OCA gene of any type will not have Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So
Okay.
they're done. You're done once you're genetically typed.
Genetically
Right.
diagnosed. That doesn't mean verbally.
Genetically.
Right, genetically. Yes.
And occasionally we ask to like read it. Like if it's sometimes they can be so written so funny and so weird that we'll, ask them to send a copy and we send it to the geneticists, the HPS experts.
I had to have my teenager interpret it for me. Now my teenager is going to study biomedical engineering, but yeah, smarter than I am. But they are worded really weirdly.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I agree. I've seen that too, trying to decipher them.
And like sort of little, Don alluded to my family situation. As I mentioned, my wife and I met at a NOAA conference, so we knew we both had some form of albinism. And when our child was born without albinism. And so, we had this interesting situation when our kid was about 4 or 5, learning to read in preschool, and we were downtown and they were constructing something, and we're looking across the street and like, what does that sign say over there? And our child just goes, it says coming soon. Like, oh yeah, you can see and read now. But that means, that makes sense why I tested for HPS4 and my wife did not test for any HPS type. Now, theoretically, Donna, you could have, if you had a carrier for HPS1, marry a carrier for HPS. If you had an HPS1 person marry an HPS4 person, their kid would not have HPS, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because it's different genetic types.
Yeah, got to be the same.
That has happened with, there are a couple of couples within NOAA whose kids do not have albinism, even though both parents do, which means they have different genetic types.
Right.
Correct.
Yep. Vanstrom, you have your hand up. You have a question or a comment?
I have a comment. I just want to share. From Puerto Rico. I was diagnosed with albinism right away when I was born, but I wasn't diagnosed with HPS until age 12. I have Crohn's disease since age 7. And I had my first surgery at age 12. And Later, I found out that I almost died bleeding. So that's why they tested me for HPS, and lo and behold, I have it. So every time I have had three more surgeries, and I have had to have like special medication for so I don't bleed to death.
Yep,
Vanstrom,
sorry, I was muted, but yeah, sorry, Donna, go ahead.
we run a clinic in Puerto Rico. Do you go to the clinic?
No, I live in Illinois now, but no, I haven't been to that clinic.
You live in Illinois now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you have to come to our conference.
Yes. We
You
would
can
we would love to have you
you
there.
can meet Matt in person.
Yes.
Get his autograph.
Yes.
Yeah, we would love to see you in person, Vanstrom. All right. Anyone else?
In Puerto Rico, about 88% of the people with albinism in Puerto Rico have HPS.
Oh.
So yeah, the HPS network does a lot of work in Puerto Rico as well.
Yeah.
And the Bronx.
Yeah. Any other questions? Comments?
We recently did work in Florida too. We spoke in
Florida, Orlando, a lot of
Y'all are
diaspora.
all over the globe, honestly.
Matt, I think you were like super, I really admire you for coming forward and talking about this. I think that it was really, number one, it was really brave of you, but number two, it's really helppful. It's helpful to hear it from your point of view, somebody who's been thinking that they have albinism all their life and suddenly came to find this out.
Well, and
So
the
this
irony
story is incredibly helpful.
The irony is I've been telling doctors about it at your behest, actually, about like, hey, you need to get tested for this. And it sounds like for people, especially those parents who might be still kind of in the, adjusting mode, it would be good to know simply for the sake that they need to understand that their kid, if they have HPS, they have a bleeding disorder that they need to know about in case anything goes wrong, and that they need to be watching the meds that their kids are taking. But I would add that, it's interesting because I've been to NOAA conferences, which are really becoming, and it's amazing, becoming these massive events now, which is awesome. I mean, they're like 3 times the size they were when I first started going in the 90s. And then you come to the HPS network, and given the fact that it's, instead of being 1 in 20,000, you're looking at 1 in a million or thereabouts, it's a much more intimate event, when the point where at the end of the weekend, you know everyone on a first name basis. And even though it is more complicated, there are these additional complications than having OCA/OA style albinism, where your bigger concerns are you're preventing sunburn, low vision, and of course the cultural differences that can come in different cultures, with depending on how different you look than other people in your community. There are still people even who are struggling with serious medical issues who are living complete and full lives. And I think that's what really, when parents have just been diagnosed, that's really what they want to know, is what the quality of my child's life going to be. And from that perspective, you're still going to, you meet amazing people at NOAA, you meet amazing people at the HPS network conferences, and your kid is going to be one of those amazing people if you're a parent of a newborn, regardless of whether the genetic testing comes back as OCA1A, OCA1B, OCA2, OA, or HPS.
Yes, and I appreciate you touching on that, Matt, because I was going to say before we leave, I know some of you here, I don't know all of you. I don't know what brought you to this call tonight, if you're a parent, if you're a person with albinism. But this call is definitely not meant to scare anyone. I think knowledge is power. And so even though it can be a scary topic, knowing these things, sorry, someone just put in the chat. We have another question, but I was just going to say, knowing these things, it's actually makes things less scary when you do have the knowledge, because you can actually plan. And when you do go to the HPS conference and you get involved with the network, you learn so much about how to advocate for yourself and how to talk to your doctors who don't know anything about it. So this is not meant to scare anyone. We want to help.
Yeah, and how to stop a kid from bleeding. Like when it's, not the lessons of, you can't go out and play like a kid. It's the lessons of, you as a parent, you should know how to stop their bleeding and
Right.
make sure their community is aware of how to stop their bleeding. And we have stuff like, everybody lives pretty well. I can't say that my daughter's normal because I'm her mother, but everybody besides us are normal. And you just really have to know how to deal with that.
We did get another question. We have time for a few more. We have about 10 minutes. So question from Chuck, are lung transplants as delicate as kidney transplants?
They're worse in that sense, aren't they?
Yeah, I was going to say that. They're much more delicate.
I mean, again, Donna's the expert here, but my doctor told me, it's the hardest transplant to do because
Correct.
the lungs are the only organ that really directly connects to the outside world. If you think about it, your heart is buried deep within inside you, and your blood is a closed circulatory system until you cut yourself, and then your platelets prevent you from clotting properly. But in general, you're not supposed to have blood coming out of your body. But with your lungs, you've got air, oxygen and nitrogen and everything else that's in the air coming into your lungs all the time, and you're breathing out carbon dioxide, and that's happening constantly. You don't have any other organ that does that they transplant. So it really is a delicate process to get for that organ. So it's the hardest organ to transplant from what I've heard.
It is. It's exposed to the dirty air, and certainly in HPS, the bleeding problem makes it harder. But it's definitely of all the organs to transplant, it's definitely the hardest.
Thank
And
you.
it's kind of amazing how many of them they have done successfully, and they
Yes.
have gotten. And then the other challenge is whenever you put something that your body didn't make inside your body is designed to try to kill things that are not supposed to be in your body, because otherwise we wouldn't make it to our first birthday. But it doesn't know that your immune system doesn't know that those are transplanted lungs that you need, not a virus or a germ. So they have to do all kinds of things to get your body to say, hey, this thing that we just put in your body that's not actually yours is it's cool being there. It's my non-medical explanation of that.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's very true. Rejection can happen sometimes. All right. Well, I do have another question.
I will say that I think before we
Karen
get to
said
that, my inspiration was there's I'm not going to say their age, but they're a little bit older than I am. Two women in the HPS network who have both had lung transplants and and frequently go to Vegas together. So
They do.
Oh yeah, it's a great community, as is Noah, and Karen just kind of summed that up. Karen Bly says, "Thank you so much, Matt. We appreciate you for sharing and raising awareness. Noah and HPS are sisters here. Noah stands beside the HPS network to keep the community members educated and encouraged to have an accurate diagnosis." So
I was
yeah,
going to say that as well. I mean, the reason why it's such a sister. I feel such a companionship from Karen. Noah is run by, Karen's doing a wonderful job with Noah, and I feel the support and the love from Noah. I'm on the board of directors as well, and as well as the board of science, and we're like together in this. And Karen comes to our conference and is there, side by side, helping us through this. And she's my buddy. We're just doing the same thing. It's obvious that we need a little bit more support with a pulmonologist and a hematologist, but we feel the love. Not only that, but they financially help support the HPS network. So we, tremendously, and my love for Noah, we don't really concentrate. It's a very symbiotic relationship because we really don't concentrate too much on vision and on skin quite as much. Most of our concentration is on our other organ systems. And we have Noah to go to. So we're going to be at the Noah conference. Hope you guys are all going to be there because we're going to be there. And we love hanging out with Noah. I've always said we're trying to save Ashley's life here, but Noah saved her spirit.
right. That is such a good way of putting it.
It's true.
Kim says, "Thank you, Matt, for sharing your story. You're going to help so many with your willingness to be candid and an advocate." Yep, agreed.
Oh, thank you.
Agreed. Yeah. And you can, and like Matt said, you were like, Matt, or yeah, Matt, you were like, when I got diagnosed with HPS, am I even in the albinism community anymore? And people have said that to me of like, why are you also going to NOAA events? I'm like, I want as many people with albinism around me at all times as I can. I want to be surrounded by them all the time.
Yeah,
So
I actually
the
had
more the better for the more conferences, the better.
I actually had this
Um,
extremely irrational thought, like, are they going to kick me out of NOAA now? And it's like, no, you still have albinism. It's not how it works.
you're good. You're good. Yep, you're still good. And in fact, I think it's good that we're bridging that gap because we need people in NOAA to be advocating. So, and to be those voices and doing things like this. So thank you so much, Matt, and thank you, Donna, for coming on, and thank you everyone for listening. And we hope we taught you something today, or just you had a good time regardless. And this is recorded, so I'll be sending out the recording of this to everyone who has signed up tonight. And just yeah, thank you so much for your time, everybody. Can't thank you enough. Yeah. Sorry. Rick said, where will we be able to find the recording? Yes, I will email it out to you in a couple days. So within the
Will
next
it be
week,
posted? Will it be posted anywhere on
it
the?
will be. It should be in our video library on Noah's website and probably on
Okay.
our YouTube channel as well, but I will send you the link directly.
Okay, thank you. I see
Yeah.
Leanne didn't make it, so she'll have to
Oh, no,
look.
that's okay. Yeah, we will get you the recording. And if you don't get it for any reason, just reach back out to me. You all have my email because I'm the one that sent the link tonight. So if you are having trouble getting to it, just email me.
Okay,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you, Matt and
you.
Donna.
Bye.
Thanks,
Amazing.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Amazing
Bye.
job, everybody. Have a great night.
Take care.
You
Bye.
too.